Yes.
Okay, terrific. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back for another session of the Summer Innovation Series. Florida is truly an amazing state for innovation, and we have had a great time celebrating the creativity of its citizens. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself and the mission of Florida House. My name is Kate Brocht, and I am the Programs and Marketing Officer here at Florida House on Capitol Hill, the only state embassy in the country. Florida House was the idea of Rhea Childs, wife of Senator and Governor Lawton Childs, and it was conceived as a space for Floridians to call home while in our nation's capital. In the past 50 years since our opening, we have made it our mission to connect, celebrate, and champion Florida to the world. As a part of that mission, we are proud to be a champion for Floridians making tremendous strides in innovation. From the creation of iconic products like Gatorade and Spanx to the development of critical systems that defend our homes and our lives, Floridians are making an impact on a national stage. We are so proud to partner with two organizations who share our goal of celebrating Florida and Floridians: the Cade Museum for Creativity and Innovation and the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. They are our summer's program sponsors, and we are so proud to work with them. This year, our series is called Revolutionizing the Future with AI. This year, we're seeing more and more companies making AI a part of their operations, and we're blown away with how Floridians are utilizing this incredible technology. I'd now like to take a minute to introduce Jamie Spurrier, who is the program manager for the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. Jamie, if you'd like to say a few words about the Hall of Fame, that would be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate, again, for that introduction. And welcome everyone again. Thank you so much for joining us for another week of awesome discussions on revolutionizing the future with AI, especially in Florida. But first, again, I want to thank our partners on this program, the Florida House on Capitol Hill, and also the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention, and of course, our host, James DiVirgilio, for this great collaboration on the Florida Innovation Summer Speaker Series. Again, it is a privilege to work with you guys and partner with you all. So a little bit about the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. We are looking to create a culture shift to celebrate our state's inventors and innovators the way we celebrate our nation's heroes. Our mission is to encourage individuals of all ages and backgrounds to strive toward the betterment of society through continuous groundbreaking innovation by supporting a culture of creativity, one that fuels innovation, drives economic growth, and encourages investment in Florida. To date, we have inducted 68 remarkable inventors who collectively hold over 5,000 patents. Some of our inductees include Thomas Edison, as well as Hollywood icon Hedy Lamarr, Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, and of course, Dr. James Robert Cade, the inventor of Gatorade. We also recently launched our new Ignite Education and Community Outreach program for the purpose of inspiring generations of new inventors through engagement. We're a statewide program located at the University of South Florida's Tampa campus, and you are welcome to visit us anytime, online or in person. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Edgar O'Neill Figueroa, the program coordinator at the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Always excited to be here on behalf of the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention. And of course, thank you to Florida House on Capitol Hill and Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. They've been incredible partners to work with. And then just to let you all know a little bit more about the Cade Museum, our mission is to transform communities by equipping future inventors, entrepreneurs, and visionaries. And the museum gets its name for Mary Cade and her husband, Dr. James Robert Cade, who was a doctor, musician, poet, and lead inventor of Gatorade. And so the museum is designed to promote an inventive mindset, which the Cade calls inventivity. And through our proprietary invention education framework, we create outreach programs and exhibits that spark wonder and teach STEAM concepts through the lens of invention. And one of our oldest programs, Cade Prize, which awards inventors and entrepreneurs, has actually gone national this year, and we'll be awarding $100,000 in seed capital. And if you want more information on that, you can head to our website, cademuseum.org. But to really get into it, I'd like to welcome back James DiVirgilio as our moderator for today's program. James is one of the country's leading fiduciary investors and financial planners, as well as the co-founder of Chacon Diaz and DiVirgilio Wealth Management. He has been featured on the world's largest news networks, was a Gator 100 honoree, and a 40 Gators Under 40 award winner. James is also an adjunct professor at the University of Florida, the host of the Gator Nation Football Podcast, the co-host of the Inventivity Pod, and on the board of directors for the Cade Museum. I'm honestly really looking forward to the conversation they're going to have today, so I'm going to turn it over to you, James. Thank you.
Thanks, Edgar, as always. And joining us today is Matthew Donovan. He is the CEO of Agricultural Intelligence and the lead product officer for AgroView, a patented, award-winning, cloud-based artificial intelligence platform spun out of the University of Florida. Matt has deep roots in supporting innovation in the state of Florida, with a bachelor's from Florida Atlantic University and a master's from the University of Florida. After an extensive corporate career, Matt led the Seventh Compass Incorporated, the first U.S. business class messaging service from startup to 10 years of consistent revenue until his departure in 2019. Most recently, of course, Matt has co-founded his second company, Agricultural Intelligence, with Dr. Yannis Ampazidis, the inventor of AgroView. Agricultural Intelligence is an agricultural science company combining remote sensing, computer vision, and artificial intelligence to provide cloud-based precision data for specialty crops. Matt, thank you for that bio, where I had to say a lot of complicated words multiple times, but welcome to the program. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you to everybody, the Florida House, the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame, and the Cade Museum for having me.
Well, let's just jump right into AI and the agricultural space. And let's start by defining what exactly we're going to talk about today. First, if you could take us through briefly what it would be like if I am planting something now and I have a large acreage of whatever I am planting here in the state of Florida. What might I be doing now to check on my progress, check on my crops, check on what's going on?
Yeah, it's really at the heart of how Dr. Ampazidis' initial innovation at the University of Florida, comes out to help someone like a grower. I think if we could kind of put a slide up to give an idea of the scale of what would and how we would be able to help an individual grower, really is tackling the job at hand. This slide it shows the demarcated or traditional Florida citrus growing. Now, there's somewhere around 400,000 defined acres with somewhere around 320,000 acres of actual harvestable areas. And of course, we've had this very big problem with citrus greening disease in Florida that harvestable acreage continues to go down. But this overall footprint is, it's across the entire state. So it's millions of square acres of total land mass. So we have to start with tackling the problem. And that problem is really the problem of scale. To give you some kind of idea, I've prepared a slide for a very well-known building, that's the Pentagon. So if everybody knows, the Pentagon is one of the largest buildings in the world. It's got 606.5 million square feet, miles of corridors, even has its own zip code. But to give you some sort of scale that this massively important building, at least here in the United States, and I guess takes up a whole corner of part of DC, if we take that building, that massive building and everything that goes in and around that, and we transport that down into a grove in Florida, you'll really understand what we have to do. This is the Joshua Grove located in Southwest Florida, and it's around 22,000 acres. And the Pentagon, you can see, is nestled inside of this grove. And in fact, you could fit dozens and dozens of Pentagons just inside of this landmass. And certainly, tackling the problems of national security are different than what a grower is facing, but the scale of the growing operation that they have to attend to is something that really is at the core of why artificial intelligence and all of its tools are critical to help agricultural growers like Florida citrus growers. So if you can kind of get the idea, is like how we help the individual citrus grower really is about how to tackle this problem of scale to begin with. So if we can take that away, but hopefully that gives kind of a predicate for how AI is important in agriculture. Really, it has a massive amount of opportunity for growth, but it has to meet first this underlying and immutable problem of the scale of the growing operation. And as you might imagine, while Florida citrus is a substantial landmass with lots of acreage, like then we talk about all of the other crops and agriculture that exists in Florida.
Okay.
But the heart of your question, James, is really how we can tackle that scale and how AI can be used in agriculture to unlock the sustainable agriculture model. That's how we're ultimately helping the broader picture. And then we help the individual grower on providing them with faster, more accurate, carbon neutral results that are precision results they've never really received before, because of the traditional practices of doing inventory is laborious, tackling that scale, utilizing sampling. It introduces all kinds of error rates, whereas AI can do what a machine does, count things really well, which humans aren't the best at.
So let's start with the micro and say I am one of those individual growers. And let's say that my field is the size of the Pentagon. Right now, if I want to sample all the orange trees that I've planted and how well they're doing, I essentially do that, right? I take some samples from different areas of the field. I sort of create perhaps a factor that says X% are probably going bad here or elsewhere. And I try to predict what I should do, where I should fix things and what should happen. It's sort of a time consuming and relatively like random sampling method based system, correct?
Yeah, in fact, traditional methods they're kind of multiple layers of things that you'd want to tackle. But even the most fundamental piece of running a citrus business is still based on one thing that all businesses are based on, which is the inventory. So for a citrus grower, it's how many trees do I have and how many trees do I not have? So the traditional methods of doing that were a couple of folks jump in a truck and they use little clickers like when you used to go to the movies and they used to click one person at a time. They'll drive up and down, up and down, up and down that row. And they'll click whenever they see a dead tree, whenever they see a live tree. It takes 2 humans to do it, to cover about 1,000 acres, which is about probably the footprint of that Pentagon area. It'd take about 8 weeks to do that. And it has a 30% error rate in it, just because humans aren't good at counting, just simple aspect of that. And then there's the environmental impact is they're in a truck. And that traditional practice has that impact. Contrasting that to how an AI-based approach works is we take data from the air, either from a drone or a UAV, or even from low altitude planes, and then we collect that massive, very large footprint of image data. We assemble all of that using some different models, and then we utilize computer vision once that's assembled to say, count them, count the trees that are there, then count the trees that aren't there. And the inventory of trees, and more importantly, gap analysis or gap detections, are sort of 2 fundamental pieces of how a citrus grower can go about doing what they need to do. They'll know how many trees that they have. They'll know how many trees they don't have so that they can pursue an optimized replanting schedule, including ordering things from a nursery. And that takes about 18 months. So precision in the order is critical for a citrus grower, even if it's, that small footprint of 1,000 acres. And then you take it up the notch from there. How do we utilize that image footprint to do more things? Instead of counting, the technology we invented at the University of Florida called AgriView not only counts the trees in the gaps, it actually measures each tree, the canopy size, and the leaf density. And so for a citrus grower, these are an additional layer of information that we provide that they usually had to guesstimate, or they would eyeball it. They really have trouble measuring the canopy area because of the point of view that they're inside of a citrus grove. And if you've ever been in a citrus grove, spun yourself around a few times, you might not know which way is north or south. So this bird's eye view and utilizing the different tools that the artificial intelligence tool suite, or the deep learning tool suite like computer vision gives us, the ability to start driving out the kind of critical foundational parts of how an agriculturalist can tackle running their business better.
So now I'm on my farm. I've taken to AgroView here, and I've got drones flying over. I have them mapping and modeling my space. I have them giving me lots of real-time data. How much time does this save me? You just mentioned that it's going to take me, a significant amount of time with two of my employees, perhaps myself, driving around in a truck to figure it out. How much time does this take from start to finish?
It's about 25 times faster. The traditional methods take weeks. Putting a drone up or flying a plane over and processing that data takes a few days. So it's 25x faster. It's 5x better in the fact that those manual or those traditional processes can have error rates from 24 to 30%, where the AgroView platform's been peer reviewed and published, and it achieves about a 5% error rate for the inventory. So it's substantially better in the faster and the improved quality of those outcomes. And it's much cleaner. That's probably the biggest impact. A truck running up and down the field, that 1,000 acres is going to use about 1,100 pounds, or it's going to emit 1,100 pounds of CO2. A low altitude plane is going to be about 20 times less carbon. A gas-powered drone, which is one of the modalities to collection, is going to be 200 times less carbon. And a battery-powered drone is going to be about 600 times less carbon. So it's a dramatic, it's a quantum type of leap forward on achieving a more carbon neutral solution to provide a faster and better outcome.
Yeah, those are some amazing numbers right there. And I love, so far we've done a lot of AI this summer already, but this one I think is the most tangible for people to grasp, just the numbers you gave right there of how significant that is of an improvement. Now, if I'm still on my farm and I'm still having doubts and questions, I'm sure my next question is, how much does this cost me? Is it worth utilizing? But I'm going to ask you instead, what are the objections to at the micro level to agriculturists using this versus the old methods?
Yeah, there's some, I would say that the biggest one is they don't have the ability to collect the data, and there's a lot of hesitancy about the hesitancy isn't that they want the result. It's that they don't want to onboard what they feel might be technology that's not core to what they do. So it's the time, the expense, the licensing of like, oh, I got to be a drone pilot now too, because these growers are really ingenious folks. And I think sometimes they get a terrible rap on multiple fronts, but their hesitancy for onboarding a technical tool or piece of equipment that's not core in what they do, which is, let's just say, trucks, buses, tractors, like all of the things that you have to have that. Like, what are you going to spend money on? They're a little hesitant about that investment. It has a much faster turnaround for inventory than, say, if they buy a really good truck that's going to last them like 10 or 12 years, whereas a drone, even a pretty good one, in 12 to 18 months, there might be a better one that they're going to have to consider to upgrade. And then all of the other things related to trying to do the data collection. Now, luckily, as a company, we've been trying to bring those ancillary services to say, okay, you don't have to do it. We've got, a contract with 6 different, vetted, insured, and licensed drone pilots. We can handle that. And that's more on the business side, but that's one of the biggest pieces. The other is what the perceived privacy of what their product or what the outcomes might be. They look at their groves as a piece of property. The products that come off of that, I think naturally have there's a concern about other people knowing how they do things. So like that is something that we've been working on with some policies that assure their privacy and certainly security of our platform. And we can kind of work through most of that, but the data, the requirement for them to collect their own data and do all of that themselves is a big objection. And then the second might be that privacy related, or not wanting someone to see how they make their orange groves work. But that's a bird's eye view of things also is the way that we can really help them, and they can help themselves too. So most of the time it's the costs, and they're already stressed on budget because of the fight that they have on their hands with citrus greening disease, which has really decimated the Florida citrus industry. So, it's a lot for them to try to onboard another technology that they're not quite sure will work. So we're working to alleviate that objection, but it's a real one, and it probably is the biggest obstacle for a more widespread adoption.
I think the obstacle you're mentioning is ubiquitous across all industries. It just might take a different look to it.
Yeah.
I myself am a big sportsman. I love sports, and of course, if you follow baseball or any sport nowadays, you're familiar with the term analytics. Mm-hmm. And the exact thing that you just described is what occurred in a variety of sporting leagues for decades. They had data, they had information, and to what you mentioned, whether it was trade secrets, I didn't want my opposing team to know what I was doing, or it's the NFL, or I don't want other teams to have my film. Eventually, over time, what you're describing will win out, right? If we're able to get the numbers you had mentioned, I, as a farmer, am able to significantly enhance my operation and reduce my costs and improve my efficiency. And ultimately that will move things forward. But with AI, as you mentioned, there's always these new hurdles. It's a new market. Does it work? Do I want to learn the new tech? Is it too cumbersome? And I think that's been a lot of where we are with AI. And now let's kind of focus this, as you're working with AI daily. Your AI is perhaps, let's call it the friendliest AI right now. It's doing a lot of counting. It's doing maybe some thinking, as users might see this. But what do you imagine the AI space in agricultural looking like in the next decade? Are we talking about machine learning and lots of what you might consider to be more of the front page news, sort of adaptive AI technologies that are getting really into agriculture, and they're able to look very granularly at a bunch of different factors? Or do you see AI in agriculture primarily staying more to, let's call it data collection, or things that people are kind of comfortable using machines for?
Yeah, it's AI is at the core of unlocking the sustainable agricultural model, which is one of those buzzwordy terms where you go like, yay, sustainable agricultural model. And most people don't really know what that is. And there's probably someone that would email me after this and, pick a nit here, but the sustainable agricultural model is 5 things. It's data analytics, which you mentioned. It's not constant and even real time, but it's consistent crop monitoring. It's the implementation of variable rate systems, such as variable rate spray systems, so that you control the inputs in such a way that you're delivering what's needed and not putting out an input that's not needed. The one that is going to get more fanfare and is already getting fanfare is the autonomous machinery and robotics. And then the 5th is I think precision irrigation, which I always think kind of fits into variable rate and a mixture of robotics. But those are the 5 core components of the sustainable agriculture model, broadly speaking. And the real payback of an AI being like all of that, machine learning, computer vision, robotics, like that's all sort of in this deep learning suite. But unlocking that sustainable agricultural model and delivering that at scale across the entire citrus industry in Florida, in California, in Texas, Arizona, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Spain, that's our charge. And we are doing it in the perennial tree space, not necessarily the annuals, which is your wheat crops, corn, wheat and corn crops. So the AI is critical to making that sustainable agricultural model come alive And those component parts require different pieces of the deep learning suite, AI, computer vision, of which are sort of the two, machine learning. Those are a couple of the popular names. But agriculture, what we're doing is certainly trying to deliver on that sustainable agricultural model. But AI is going to play a part in each one of those things. And each one of those 5 areas is almost a sub-industry in and of itself. And each one of those areas applies to perennial crops like citrus, avocados, olives, grapes. It also applies to annuals like the corns, the wheats, the rice, but they're different, different manifestations of how the deep learning suite will kind of aid those crops. But those 5 elements are really, they're central to it. And, it's funny, you mentioned data analytics. It reminds me of the movie Moneyball, and talking about how there's a quote in that movie that I always like. It was, if he's a good hitter, how come he can't hit? And it is kind of like the evaluation of what a good hitter was in baseball was transcended by the analytics of how do you actually win the game? Because a good hitter doesn't necessarily win the game. Someone who's on base and moves across the bases and to home plate and scores, the runs are what win the game. And that it rings true. And your reference is probably appropriate here, because in some ways that transition or transcending what traditional belief, traditional practice, even well-founded practices that don't need to go anywhere, some of that's not going to change the game. Some of it will enhance the game in ways that improve, the outcomes for the people who are investing the time to play it or to observe it. So that's the stakeholder vibe, right? Like there's the people doing it and there's the people around it. But there's an interesting analog to what we are really trying to drive towards in the agricultural market and deliver on the sustainable model.
All right, let's play a sort of fill in the blank game here. This first one is probably a known data point. The second one will be speculation by you. But what percentage would you say in the state of Florida right now, agriculturists or agriculturists is using AI?
Less than 5%.
And then 15 years from now, what would you say?
Probably be 90%. There's no way around it. Most of the thought leaders in this space, including Dr. Scott Angle here at the University of Florida, have embraced the Envision 2050 and the need to double food production, both staple crops as well as non-staple crops or perennial crops like citrus and others, to double that by 2050, which I guess is longer than 15 years, but we'll call it somewhere in that space, to have to double it. The only pathway for, and I don't mean to be dire, because I'm not a doomsayer, but the only way to really achieve that goal or even approach that goal is going to be through the use of AI in every possible way, from curriculums in the university to practices in the field to things that we don't even have in our minds yet that are possible that we need to step towards. It'll have to be over 90% in 15 years and 100% by 2050, or we're in a food safety bind that most of the experts, I think, say will have substantial impacts that will be bad for humanity.
Yeah, that's an amazing stat as far as adoption goes. And obviously it really shows, I think, very clearly, again, I think this episode's the clearest about if you have a field and a farm, what might that look like 15, 20 years from now? And the answer is significantly different than it's looked in times before. And there's been plenty of innovations, right, when it comes to tractors and mass farming techniques. But this one will increase the efficiency, you could argue, at a higher level, kind of like our baseball example, more significantly than everything we've seen before. And also, I think we can expect widespread adoption. So an amazing opportunity lies in front of all of us here in the state of Florida. Heavy agriculture, a lot of opportunity here as well. All right, Matt, that brings us to our Q&A section. If you have a
Okay.
question, you can put that into the chat window and I will ask Matt on your behalf. First one is from Kim. How did you find product market fit early on?
As a company, we focused on two core segments that we believed we'd have a product market fit for. The first we selected was crop insurers, because the very high level of precision that the AgriView platform could provide. And we do what you do when you're building a company. You reach out to as many of the crop insurers as you can. It's a fairly limited field in the United States. There are a total of 8 crop insurers. So we did outreach to those, and within about 12 months, we were able to showcase that we had the refined result they wanted, because for a crop insurer, precision is about their financial exposure. So it was a perfect market fit. For the crop growers, which I would kind of consider, I'd consider the crop insurers are kind of like a wholesale market, where the crop growers are more of a retail market. They have some of the similar needs, but their additional needs have a lot more to do with nutrient analysis. So the middle of last year, we started delivering on an advanced nutrient analysis, and we're still working out product market fit for the grower. But we did the same thing. We reached out to people we knew. We'd been testing it for going back about 18 months, but we sort of really put up it's good enough level. And then it's really about what price makes sense, how often they have to collect data. Are they going to pay for the data? Do they have the budget? So the product market fit with them is there for the result. Some of the objections that aren't driving the fit more have to do with budget, but just the traditional ways, and doing a lot of hard work on making a lot of phone calls and having as many Zoom meetings or going and meeting in person as possible. But the predicates were based on the precision that we knew we were delivering with the AgriView platform.
Victoria asks, the AI for agricultural you've described sounds not only helpful for growers and farmers and advantageous to expanding the business economy, but I imagine it's also addressing a critical need for food sustainability, as you mentioned, as well as environmental concerns, as you also mentioned. Could you talk a little bit more about that, she asks?
Yeah, and as I guess maybe a coattail for the nutrient analysis, that is more of the grower side of things. The growers are motivated first to preserve their land. It's a common misconception about growers. They're extreme conservationists, and some people, well, some of them might have a different side of that spectrum, but their first thing is about preserving their land and making it viable, at least perennial crop growers for sure, for the next harvest. They also have to make their business work, and the Florida citrus grower needs to understand their current nutrient levels, because their current nutrient levels are being hampered by the presence of the citrus greening disease here in our state and elsewhere. So in order for them to do things more sustainable, they've got to balance preserving their land, and they've got to produce a crop. So they have to apply some sort of nutrients or fertilizers. Where we're going with AI is to help the grower understand where there are actual deficiencies in an area versus where they have an optimum or even high level of current nutrient values. That way, instead of in a 50-acre area where they're going to apply those nutrients or fertilizers, they can focus and target the areas that are just in a deficient state, so that the total input in that 50 acres can be reduced down, which has a cascading effects on the overall preservation of their area, adjacent waterways, groundwater issues. There's a whole chain of events, but delivering an AI solution that's reliable on the nutrient analysis can help be much more targeted in the way that they order their fertilizers or order their nutrients, thereby reducing the total input that they place on it. And it's going to be better for them, because they'll still get the same level of fruit, knock on wood, they'll still get the same level of fruit while they're addressing the deficiencies that they might have in a more targeted approach.
Yeah, that's well said. Jamie asked me, you talk about farmers being reluctant to possibly incorporate technology for the reasons you've already listed. Have you seen any difference perhaps with the younger or next generation of growers or agriculturalists? Are they perhaps more likely to want to adopt this sort of technology?
I think this is analogous to many industries. Younger growers are more interested in trying technology. The Florida producer, the young Florida producer, is also under an extraordinary pressure of maintaining the heritage of their land and their family's interest. And it's very difficult for the transition towards a new technology. But progress is progress, and results are real results. If they put more fruit in the box, or if they can level off the production that has been decimated over the last 6 or 7 years, their dad or their grandparents who've passed before them will still be proud of them. So there's a real human element into this decision making for technology adoption too, at least in this space, that other spaces probably don't quite have that. And certainly as a business that's trying to serve customers like that, that's become as much of an understanding how we can serve their needs with technology is how to transition them towards having technology work for them to preserve their family's legacy.
Yeah, well said as well. Time for one more question. Madeline asks, and it ties right into what we just said, how can we prepare the elementary and middle schoolers for this significant change from 5% adoption to AI to perhaps 100% over the course of their early working lifetime? How do you begin to incorporate these things?
In my space,
or just in general, broadly?
I think we're all being exposed to the where artificial intelligence, and I like even to use the word or the phrase augmented intelligence from AI, because I think that's the step through. There's lots of different AI issues, and a huge one is alignment. Like there's ethical alignments in any specific platform where artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence is going to be used. It's inevitable that there'll be a transition for our young kids, at least in the space of understanding agriculture better. It could be, just exposing kids to agriculture more. I grew up in Palm Beach County, Florida. So a large part of my agricultural exposure was there's a bunch of cane fields west of town. And then I moved up and been in Gainesville here for 25 years. And now over the last 3 years, I now understand more about Florida agriculture than I ever have. And that's just by being out there, asking questions. Going out and picking berries with your kids is a good way for them to understand what the field of endeavor. Going and picking blueberries is popular around this time of year. Taking your family out there and walking up and down the fields and realizing, wow, that's a 5-acre block of blueberries. It's just getting them exposed to an industry, and along the way, they know what drones are, because a younger person are like, well, why don't you just fly a drone up there and take a picture of it? And it's like, yep, that's you're right, and it's extremely complicated on actually how to make that work. But just having kids exposed to technology is something that's inevitable. Exposing them to the world around them as it is in its natural state is a critical aspect of them developing and appreciating the world around them. And I think all of that they'll start to see how to utilize technologies, and hopefully they'll appreciate the real world around them. And I hope that doesn't spin out a debate on whether or not we're going to have the AI demigods crash down on us. I simply mean that we should do for our kids, I think, what hopefully our parents tried with any of us, is to try to expose them to the world around them, teach them, to be inquisitive, teach them to think about things, and then to use the tools that we have. We didn't have Zoom 15 years ago, but we also didn't have a calculator 70 years ago. Like, technology is always integrated, and hopefully it's with the intention, the purposeful intention of making the world around us better, however that technology is deployed. And so, those are, I think, things that are going to naturally happen with youngsters anyway.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. All these thoughts very good today. Very enlightening session, Matt. Thank you for joining us, Matt Donovan. You can find more about him, of course, on Google. Way to find out more about anyone. UF Innovation of the Year in 2020 as well. So there's a lot of science behind what he's doing, what they've been doing. Again, it's been amazing having you. And if you really connected with this, you can think of something very simple, which is the cell phone in your pocket that has GPS on there. If your kids are using that, they already are way ahead of what we had to do growing up. Use a map, go the wrong way, stop and ask somebody. GPS is real-time intelligent decision-making, accidents, etc., whatever. Kind of the same thing you're talking about here, Matt, in the field as well. So eventually it will be adopted. But thank you again. Wonderful talk yet again on AI and agriculture. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to turn this back over now to our host, Kate.
Thank you both. That was such an interesting discussion. It is so exciting to see what the next 15, 20, 30 years of AI in agriculture will look like. Thank you for leading a great discussion. I hope you all enjoyed the program and learned something new about how agriculture intelligence and Matt are really working within the agriculture industry. We are going to be taking a bit of a break next week while we all enjoy the 4th of July holidays, but we look forward to gathering again on Tuesday, July 11th at 2 p.m. to hear from Captain Robert Betts, who is the Executive Officer for the Naval Air Warfare Center Training. Captain Betts and James will be discussing AI in a military setting. You should be getting the link shortly, along with a link to the recordings that you can watch back and you can share with friends and family. In the meantime, we wish you all a happy and safe holiday weekend. We hope you all are safe from the incoming thunderstorms in Washington, D.C. that are menacing out the window. But those down in Florida, enjoy some sunshine. If you're in Gainesville, I hope you visit the Cade Museum in Tampa, the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. And when you're here in Washington, D.C., please come by and visit your state embassy. We hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks, everybody.